Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew joins us now in a first on CNBC interview. As someone who could have made that call as a former Treasury Secretary, what was your immediate reaction when you saw this Treasury Secretary call China a currency manipulator?
Sarah, let's just take a step back. We're at a really dangerous moment right now where a trade war is escalating into currency responses, and it's time for leaders on both sides to find a way to de-escalate. The history here is clear. For many, many years, currency was the hottest issue between the United States and China on the economic agenda. When I was secretary, for the first 2 years, it was the top of my list. The last 2 years and since then, we actually addressed the problem. For the last 4 years, China has actually reversed itself. It's been intervening to defend its currency, not to devalue its currency. I'm very proud that we succeeded by engaging, by bringing the world community together, by being tough in one-on-one negotiations, and they changed their policy. I think if you look at the last period of time, the facts don't support the claim of currency manipulation. Just one thing, the designation itself, the power of it, is weakened if you use it in a way that makes it not look serious.
But with all due respect, Mr. Secretary, your actions and conversations with them over that 8 years didn't make them change their policy. It's just the free floating rate changed. And they wanted to maintain a stability, which meant rather than keeping it weak, they were propping it up.
Well, I think actually what happened was they made a series of decisions under constant pressure. And the pressure was, if you want to sit at the table as one of the leaders of the global system, you have to play by the rules. That you can't set a level that's going to devalue your currency. They went first to raising the point that they set, to changing the basket to being a global basket, to allowing market forces to drive it more than setting of the rate. Now, they did intervene to defend. And I think we have to be clear that, we have never criticized them for defending their currency, which is to their disadvantage as a trade matter, but it prevents devaluation that could be destabilizing. I'm not sure exactly what happened this week, and frankly, neither is anyone else. It may well have been removing the defense of the currency and allowing the market to drive it down. It may have been some intervention directly or indirectly. The point is that for the last number of years, even in the Treasury's own reports, they've recognized that China had stopped doing the things that we criticized them for doing. I'm not saying they didn't do it because it was in their interest. It was hurting them to do it. We kept telling them it's hurting you to do it. And the fact that they changed was really important. We had a whole list of things that we engaged with China on. Many of them are the same issues that are being engaged now. Intellectual property is incredibly important. Opening markets is incredibly important. Not subsidizing industries unfairly is incredibly important. We should be engaging on that. But we need to do it in a way that doesn't destabilize the global economy and become a threat to geopolitical stability.
You started off by saying we're at a dangerous moment now that this has escalated into what many are calling a currency war. What do you mean? What happens next?
When you're sitting with other finance ministers and world leaders, and they're thinking about doing things that would either talk down or devalue your currency, the United States used to have the strongest voice at the table saying, don't do that. If you do that, it becomes a tit for tat, and it gets out of control, and that doesn't usually end well. It hasn't ended well before. It's not likely to end well now. For us to not have that moral power is actually destabilizing in the global conversation. I think you have to look in the region. What are Japan and South Korea going to do? In Europe, what are Europe and the UK going to do if they feel? Now, China's second-day response was to say, we're not going to let this keep going. I think there's a moment now where you can reset. But I think the war of words is going to have to be toned down, and the engagement is going to have to be on achievable compromises, not on capitulation, which is not going to happen.
I want to go back to your point, the fact that they did let it cross the 7 mark. 2016, 2018, they were very clearly adamant that they didn't want to. So the label from Treasury aside, do you think that that's a sign that they are feeling the pressure more than perhaps people realize? Your understanding of how they look at this, was that a significant moment for you?
Look, everyone was watching 7. I'm sure that they were watching it whether they would admit it or not. They are feeling pressure. They're feeling pressure in their economy as a macroeconomic matter. They're feeling it in sectors that are particularly affected. We're feeling pressure. We're feeling it in the farm sector very strongly. Trade wars are not good for either side, so both sides are feeling it. The answer is not to keep escalating and finding more ways to make it get to the point where you can't resolve it. The challenge is, how do you figure out what is a realistic, reasonable step that would be progress that keeps you engaged without having it spill over? I actually think if you look back to the years we engaged with them, we had a host of issues we were engaged on. While we were fighting on exchange rates, we were also collaborating on putting sanctions on Iran. And we were collaborating on working on the Paris Climate Accords. It's a complicated relationship, and it has to be rooted in an honest exchange.